Hello, this is Jeff at Magical Fruit Toots. In this Photoshop tutorial, we will stylize a map of Ames, Iowa. For this city, we will use the standard color style. First, you should create a basic Ames map using the open source StyleMill program and the Mapzen.com Metro Extracts feature to retrieve the map data files as necessary. If you have not yet done so, you should review the Photoshop Map Arts Basics tutorial on this channel for instructions on how to make the basic map and how to export it to the Photoshop PSD file. To make it easier for you, I have placed the Carto CSS code for the basic Ames map in the description area for this tutorial. For Ames, I used the Mapzen Metro Extracts to get the Ames, Iowa, USA locality custom extract. Then downloaded and uncompressed the OSM2 PGSQL shapefile provided. There are no additional changes necessary to the Ames basic map code. Open up the Ames Begin Photoshop file. Press Ctrl-Alt-A to select all layers. Right-click and choose Rasterize Layers. Select the top layer. You may want to crop your image for easy framing. The Ames image is essentially square. Open your crop tool set to square with a 1:1 ratio and adjust the crop so the map is centered in the area. Make sure to leave room on the bottom for the city text name. Click the big check mark to accept. Rename the bottom layer to City. Make a new layer below the city layer by holding down the Ctrl and the Alt key while clicking the Add New Layer icon on the bottom of the Layers panel. Name the layer Land. Change the foreground color to number 8F6C0D. Press Alt or Option plus Backspace to fill the land layer with the foreground color. Choose File Save As. Then save the document as Ames Begin 2. Then immediately save the document as Ames 1, as we want to have Ames Begin 2 available in case we need to start over. Change the background color to white. This map is not meant to be accurate, but an artistic representation. So next we will simplify the city shape. Make the city layer active. Turn off the eyes of the streets and the water layers. Open up the standard hard brush. Alt-click the city area to sample its color. Start simplifying as demonstrated. Fill in areas mostly surrounded by city proper. These are usually unincorporated or government-owned areas, and for artistic purposes, we will consider them part of the city. Next, add a mask to the city layer. Use a black brush in the mask to remove the little jutty city boundaries and smooth out sharp corners and angles as demonstrated. Next, to simplify and touch up the water layer, turn on its eye. Make the water layer active. Use your brush tool. Alt or Option click the watercolor to load the color. Then simplify and smooth the water as necessary. Next we will style the streets. Make the streets layer active. Turn on its eye. Press Ctrl-A to select all. Choose Image Crop. Deselect. Control or Command click the thumbnail to select all the streets. Since your background color is white, press Control Delete to fill the streets with white. Deselect. Rename it Outside Streets. Control or Command plus Alt plus J to duplicate. Name the duplicate City Streets. Temporarily turn off the eye of the Outside Streets layer so we can see the changes to the City Streets layer. Control-click the city thumbnail to select the city area. Inverse the selection to select the area outside the city. Hold down the Alt or Option key and select the Add Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. Next, we will apply a radial fadeaway to the Outside Streets. Make the Outside Streets layer active. Turn on its eye. Add a layer mask to it. Temporarily turn off the eye of the City Streets layer. Control or Command click the City layer thumbnail. Inverse the selection. Make sure the foreground is white and the background is black. Choose the Gradient tool. Set the foreground to background. Radial gradient should be used. Then draw a line from about the center of the city to a little beyond the upper right corner of the image, as demonstrated. Since the outer streets are a separate layer, we can adjust their opacity later if needed. Deselect the selection. You may need to adjust for the streets that are bordering but not wholly part of the city proper. The map will look much better if they are included as part of the city. Make the City Streets layer active. Turn on its eye. Control-click the thumbnail to select all the streets. Move to the City Streets mask. Zoom in and use a white brush to unhide the streets on the edges of the city as demonstrated. Deselect. Now we will add layer styles to the streets. Make the streets thumbnail active. Press Ctrl+1 to zoom to 100%. Add a bevel and emboss layer style. Use a style of inner bevel. Technique: chisel hard. Depth: 501%. Direction: up. Size: 3 pixels, or about a fourth of the width of a small street. Soften: 1. Angle 120 degrees. Use global light. Altitude: 40 degrees. Gloss contour: linear. Anti-alias: on. Highlight mode: screen, with the color of white at 60%. Shadow mode: multiply, with the color of black at 74%. Next, add a drop shadow layer style. Blend mode: normal. Opacity: 75%. Angle 120 degrees. Distance and size: 3 pixels, or about a fourth of the width of a small street. Spread: 4%. Press Ctrl+0 to fit the image to the screen. Next, we will style the water. Make the water layer active. Rename it to Outside Water. Control or Command plus Alt plus J to duplicate. Name the duplicate City Water. Temporarily turn off the eye of the outside water layer so we can see the changes in the city water layer. Control or Command click the city thumbnail to select the city area. Inverse the selection to select the area outside the city. Hold down the Alt or Option key and select the Add Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. Now the city water layer has only the water inside the city showing. Next, we'll apply a radial fadeaway to the outside water. Make the outside water layer active. Turn on its eye. Temporarily turn off the eye of the city water layer. Add a layer mask to the outside water layer. Control or Command-click the city layer thumbnail to make a selection. Inverse the selection. Choose the Gradient tool. Use Radial Gradient. Set the foreground to background. Make sure the foreground is white and the background is black. Then draw a line from the center of the city to a little beyond the upper right-hand corner of the image, as demonstrated. Deselect the selection. Since the outer water is a separate layer, we can adjust its opacity later if needed. Turn back on the eye of the city water. You may need to adjust for the rivers that are bordering but not wholly part of the city proper. The map will look much better if they are included as part of the city. Make the city water layer active. Control-click the thumbnail to select all the rivers. Move to the city water mask. Zoom in and use a white brush to unhide the rivers on the edges of the city and between city areas as demonstrated. Deselect. Next, to style the water, make the city water layer active. Add an inner shadow layer style with a blend mode of multiply, opacity 74%, distance and size 6 pixels, or about a fifth of the width of the river at its smallest point, choke at 6%, contour linear, and anti-alias on. Next, to style the city, make the city layer active. Change the foreground color to number 1098B0. Add a gradient overlay layer style. Choose the foreground to background gradient. Blending mode, luminosity, opacity 64%, reverse and align with layer, checked. Style radial, angle 97 degrees, and scale 150%. Now choose and click the drop shadow. Blending mode multiply, opacity 74%, angle 120 degrees, distance 65 pixels, spread 52%, and size 7. Next, to style the land, make the land layer active. Zoom in a little. Place in bed the aged and glowing soft gold image. A link is in the description area. Stretch it over the image as shown. Click the big check mark. Press Ctrl-Alt+G to clip it to the land layer. Change its blend mode to luminosity and reduce its opacity to 26%. This will help add tonal variation to the land. Add a levels adjustment layer. Check the Clip To icon to clip it. Change the input levels to 51, 1.06, and 235. This will give more contrast and definition to the land. Close the Levels panel. On this map in TileMill, I did not leave enough space on the bottom for the text to look balanced. I need to move the city up a little to make room. Select the City Streets layer. Then, while holding down Shift, select the City layer. Now everything but the land is selected. Choose the Move tool. Use the up arrow keys to move the city up and make more room. Now choose the Hand tool to turn off the Move tool. Make the City Streets layer active. Choose the Text tool. Click the text color box and use the eyedropper to choose from a light area of the city. Choose your font. I used Gabrielle from DeFonts. The link is in the description area. Change the font size to 120 points. Choose the center text icon. Place the cursor between the bottom of the city and the bottom of the page. Type in Ames, Iowa. Double-click the text layer and open the character panel. If you don't have the character panel, choose Windows Character. Select the tracking drop-down and select 50. Click the big check mark to accept. We'll add a bevel and emboss adjustment layer to the text. The bevel and emboss will have the same settings as the city streets bevel. So while holding down the Alt or Option key, drag the city streets bevel and emboss up to the text layer, then let go. The drop shadow is almost the same as a city drop shadow. So while holding the Alt or Option key, drag the city drop shadow up to the text layer, then let go. Double-click the text layer drop shadow, then change the distance from 65 pixels to 28 pixels. Now choose the Move tool. Press Ctrl-A to select everything. Then press the Align Horizontal Centers on the Transform settings. Deselect. You can now move the text up and down to center it vertically in the bottom area. Select the Hand tool to turn off the Move tool. Close the Character panel. Next, some final touch-ups. The city streets drop shadow has caused some problems where the streets meet the left edge of the image. To fix, choose the City Streets mask. Use a black brush about size 25. And paint over the unwanted shadows as demonstrated. Also, there is a problem where some outside streets end near the I of the word Iowa. Paint over it also. Then switch to the outside streets mask and paint over those two spots again. You may need to repair the streets you unhid earlier. Zoom in to inspect them. If you do, Control-click the City Streets thumbnail, then choose the City Streets mask. Use a white brush to touch up the streets if needed. Deselect. This concludes the tutorial. Here is the final image. Coming soon, Topeka, Kansas, using the gradient outline style.